Welcome into the State of the Program on Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by former Longhorn Rod Babers and Gerry Hamilton. This episode brought to you by our friends over at loeylawfirm.com. They've been helping injured Texans for 20 plus years. Guys, in this episode of State of the Program, what I want to get to, and I think it's a good overarching discussion, is the state of college football as it relates to parity, as well as revenue share, and then what Texas can and should be doing to stay ahead of the game. Because there is an opportunity for Texas, even with rev share, to still have a bigger piece of the puzzle or bigger piece of the pie. Rod, let's start with you, though, and really start with how much parity we're actually seeing across college football right now, because the numbers are really revealing.
Yeah, they match the eye test. I got a couple of stats for you guys here. So 43, actually over 43% of Power 4 versus Power 4 games this season have been decided by one score. That's the highest rate for Power 4, Power 5, or BCS teams in the last 20 years. Average score margin is a little over 14 points per game, which is the lowest, by the way, since 2009. Here's an SEC stat for you. Basically from 2016 to 2024, roughly one-third of SEC games were decided by 7 points or less, and 40% were decided by 10 points or less. In 2025, gentlemen, 60% of SEC games have been decided by a touchdown or less. 72% of SEC games, almost 3 out of 4 have been decided by 10 points or less this season. Shout out to a dog report. I got that stat. So there's no doubt about it. There's a lot of parity in college football. And I think that those stats show it matches the eye test. I think we're all seeing it and feeling it, by the way.
There's no doubt that the transfer portal is part of that. Mm-hmm. But I think NIL rev share being more equally distributed is also having some ramifications. Gerry, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it's going to show up more in the portal than the high school ranks, because I think the high school ranks are pretty much going to stay the same. It's going to be the Ohio States, Georgia, Texas, all those player schools battling for a certain percentage of these high school top tier guys. And, maybe your Arizona or your Arizona State gets involved more on a kid on the West Coast if they can, right? In the Big 12 with USC and Oregon, everybody in the Big 10. But by and large, those top tier kids are going to go to the same schools. So I think it's really going to be portal affected. And that's going to be retaining guys and keep them from jumping in the portal. And then guys who do go in the portal, suddenly now you can compete with a blue blood for a couple of kids, which you could not before rev share.
Well, I think it's amazing to think Texas is having to theoretically come down.
Yep.
Because if you believe published reports, they're anywhere from $30 to $45 million in budget from last year alone. So the question I have is, how do you keep your roster intact?
Yeah.
If you're having to move down? The issue that I have now is it's not just those top 25 teams. It's going to be the Rutgers of the world that go from basically 1 to 2 million in collective spending to 13, 14, whatever out of the gate. That's going to fundamentally change the market in the portal. So how does Texas eventually survive and succeed in that? Rod, what do you think about what Gerry's talking about here, how portal as well as retention will all drive this market now that rev share is such a big component of it all?
Yeah, the retention element is interesting too, right? Because, kind of the comparison to the NFL. I mean, are there renegotiations here? Right? Yeah. Retaining guys, because some guys may outperform status, and then some guys underperform. I don't know how that works, and I know that's got to be a really challenging thing too, because this is all brand new. But I wonder, is that something that also plays a huge role? I think that's also why the coaches, they want to play a lot of guys. I mean, for a lot of reasons, they want guys to be healthy, and they want guys to be fresh, and they want to be deep. Also, guys need to play. If they're not playing, most guys weren't playing, they're unhappy and they may be looking elsewhere. And that's something you got to think about too in terms of retention. So I think it's another reason why, hey, you want these guys to play and you'd like to start that NFL pipeline. Used to kind of discourage guys from going to the league. Now, if you're those big time programs, stockpiling talent, you're like, hey man, go ahead. I got these young guys and they need to play and they want to play, and we're paying them, by the way. So it is very interesting, and a lot of comparisons to the NFL for a good reason, because I think now they have a lot of the same challenges. But at least the NFL, you can keep a guy for 3-4 years on a contract. But in the college, you don't really have that element just yet. And I think that's what makes college really, really challenging for any coach and any general managers, that I can't guarantee I can keep a player for more than a year. I can't.
Yeah.
You don't have that power.
Yeah. A couple of things there. So Bobby, my question to you is, do you have to maybe pare down the list of guys, the number of guys that you feel like we have to keep? I think that's something, because I think that number's been higher for some of your Ohio States and Texases of the world. Does that number come down now? Does the guys we feel like we have to keep, and that opens up some for the other Power 4 teams. The other thing I would say to that is there is going to be NIL outside the rev share.
Yes.
I mean, it's not like that's the rev share is going to be the number. People are going to work outside that number. So the other part of that is how much outside the number a team's going to go, because that can affect how many guys you're going to be able to retain.
Yeah, I want to get into that in a second segment here in a little bit. But what I want, and how Texas, I think, can do that effectively and legitimately, et cetera, within the confines of the NIL Go apparatus, et cetera. The thing that I would say to y'all, and Rod, you've harped on this, Gerry, we've talked about it as well, is which positions do you spend money on with young guys versus old guys? Yeah. Because you've got to admit that, only 25% of Texas recruiting class is really seeing significant action right now. Yeah. So you could theoretically say, oh, there's some dead money on Texas's current roster right now because they're not on the field. So how, what positions are, we all know, for example, offensive line is a very developmental position. Always has been, always will be. They're young when they start. By the time they're seniors, they're the fully grown men. Rod likes to use the term armor. They've got it all, right? Yeah. How do you position that portion of your roster, which they're not going to see much time as freshmen and sophomores, most likely, unless they're freaky good? Yeah. It's just the way it is. So how do you portion that piece of your roster versus what you put in the upper class? I think that's part of the overall issue that we need to talk about too, because look, I don't know, receiver is a great example. Unless you think a receiver is a A++ guy as a true freshman, how do you spend a lot of money on a position where you could just as easily maybe go get a really good guy out of the portal that is already proven productive at that level? Rob, what do you think about that? There's some elements to that could take on the program. Even running back might be part of that thought.
Yeah, and I think it's obviously program specific, right? You see some programs, they live and die with a transfer quarterback. Bringing in a transfer guy, and it seems like Sark, even though Quinn was technically a transfer, seems like now he wants to build more of a homegrown approach to quarterback specifically, but he's had great success with transfer portal receivers coming into his system. So it seems like I always said receivers the deepest position in football at any level. So it kind of supports your belief there, Bobby, that why would you overly invest in a freshman receiver and develop him when you can just go get a guy that's already halfway there in development at that position? O-line, D tackle, the edge position is different. So I would think if you look at premium positions, you got to have an approach for the premium positions first. And that's quarterback, that's edge, wide receivers in there, cornerbacks in there. I would even throw D tackle in there now. I think D tackle, the modern D tackle, go look at the NFL, the way they pay D tackles now. I think if you find a 3-down D tackle, it also kind of goes into that premium category too. And it's all about your scheme. Your scheme is going to be a big part of this too. In terms of guys you want to put into a developmental model as opposed to guys you want to come in and play right now. So I think it's program specific. Every program is going to be specific. I mean, hell, Oklahoma ain't had a quarterback out of high school since when? But they had great success with those quarterbacks. That's just the way they operate now. So I just think it's got to be program specific. What is available to you, and what limitations do you have in terms of your NIL and then the roster management?
And I think it's also league specific in a weird way. Like in the
Ooh,
SEC, in the SEC, you got to spend on D-line.
Yep.
If you don't, you're going to be behind in this league. Everybody you play at the higher levels of the SEC is really good on the defensive front, and that's where the battles are. The offensive tackle, defensive front, edge, linebacker, whatever you want to call it, but defensive front are really going to be key in the SEC moving forward, I think. And I'll say that another piece to this, which is interesting, guys, is can you really have 3 quarterbacks that are paid pretty well on a roster?
It could be hard.
It's going to be hard.
Yeah,
it's going to be hard to have 3 depth that you ideally want at that position to really develop those kids over time.
Totally. I want to add this. Where's the room on the roster? Rod, you mentioned the premium positions. Okay. Where's the room on the roster for a quote unquote disruptor? Maybe that's, for example, Brock Bowers at tight end. That is not a premium position.
Yeah, I got you.
But Brock Bowers is a disruptor at tight end.
Yeah, you're Caleb Downs.
Yeah. Linebacker may not be a categorization of a premium position, but Anthony Hill is a disruptor.
Agreed.
Yes. So how do you manage and massage all of that within the same thing and keep your depth? I think what we're all saying is that there's a reason that there's some parity coming to college football, and it is not just the transfer portal, but also the NIL rev share within it from the universities, okay, that is causing this kind of disbursement of talent. And then there's how your team chooses to use that. Next, I want to get into how I think Texas is going to continue to be a player in NIL. But first, we need to say thank you to our sponsor. That is Adam Lowy of the Lowy Law Firm. Adam's been helping injured Texans for 20 plus years. If you've been injured in a car wreck, truck wreck, automobile accident of any kind, from ATV to 18-wheeler, and think you may be due compensation, make sure you reach out to Adam and his group at loweylawfirm.com. That is loweylawfirm.com. Thank you, Adam, for your ongoing sponsorship of On Texas Football, as well as Texas football and sports in general. Hey, guys, this last piece. How does Texas stay ahead of the game? Well, we know Texas has some endemic advantages.
Yep.
Big city, premier brand program, wealthy alumni, desire to be good at football, right? All of those things. Some of those things are supposed to be mitigated by these new rules, right? You're not, the alumni value is not supposed to really be front and center anymore, even though it likely will continue to be. And I think that's one of the ways Texas has an advantage. But the other piece of this are brand deals with the Nikes of the world, as well as the deals with IMG in Learfield that Texas has. Texas is working with Learfield, et cetera, and they have one of the biggest and best deals in college sports, if not top 2, if not top 5, top 1 or 2 of it eventually here, whenever that it all gets negotiated out. But my point being is that is how Texas is going to come on top of that and be able to increase its roster value from maybe 16 or 17 in rev share, whatever it is right now, exactly 15 from University of Texas, into the 20, 25, 30 range that they're accustomed to.
Yeah.
Not that extra value by the Learfield, IMG, those guys, and Nike is not going to be afforded to every school. Rutgers won't get that. There's very few cities as big as Austin that house, and the number one team in that city is a brand like UT, as opposed to, I don't know, the Washington Huskies versus the Seattle Seahawks, right? a major city, but they certainly play second fiddle to the Seahawks and maybe even the Mariners, right? So they may even be third fiddle. In Austin, Texas is one.
Yep.
The only other city that is really like that, that's big, is Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah.
Million plus, 2 million people in the metro area. Ohio State is the brand there.
Yep.
I think those two teams have a chance actually to kind of push ahead a little bit here. What are your, because of the local value that can be extracted?
I totally agree with you. In terms of the Texas perspective, right? I mean, the city of Austin has grown so much. You got such a corporate influence there, the tech influence there. There's a cultural influence, obviously pop cultural influence with all the events, ACL and South by Southwest. So I do think for Texas, it's a little bit easier to get into these huge, national NIL deals with their big time recognizable athletes like an Arch Manning or a Colin Simmons. So I do think for Texas, that's one of those built-in advantages. But I do think the state, one of the things I can't wait to explore and kind of study as NIL and revenue sharing continue to evolve is the state of Texas, because you talked about it, Bobby. I mean, the passion of this state is football, period. High school, college, and pro. And I don't think it's a coincidence that you have some Texas schools that are thriving right now. I don't think it's a coincidence that in this new era, Texas Tech and Texas A&M, and now Texas, SMU looking pretty good. You got North Texas looking pretty good. I think that is going to continue. Now, it may be different schools that end up taking advantage of it. Texas should always be there, and Texas A&M, by the way, in this new era. But somebody told me an old coach I was talking to, he said, it ain't a coincidence. You can pay them back in the old Southwest Conference days, and we can pay them now. That's why Texas schools are good. And I said, honestly, I never thought about it being that simple, but Texas has a lot of old oil money, and the passion of this state is football. The priority is football. And I think that is actually starting to come to fruition in this new era of college sports.
Thanks again to our sponsor, Adam Lowy over at the Lowy Law Firm. Remember, check him out. If you've been injured in a car wreck, truck wreck, automobile accident of any kind, it is loweylawfirm.com. They'll give you a free, no strings attached consultation to see if you might be due compensation. Thank you, Adam, for your sponsorship of On Texas Football. All right, that'll do it for today's episode of the State of the Program. For Rod Babers and Gerry Hamilton, I'm Bobby Burton. Thanks for watching. Hook 'em horns.